Hello everyone, ADHD the SideQuestGamer here, and before I start this video, I just want to mention a collaboration I did with another YouTuber known as Innocent Christoph Gavin. I do recommend checking that out, as it's a behind-the-scenes video on his channel. And I recommend checking out his channel while we're at it, because, well, he may be gone for the summer, but there's plenty of content to watch already. His top 15 Metroid weapons I do recommend checking out, as well as his Ace Attorney analyzation or analysis of the first Ace Attorney game, as that's going to be a regular series, so you might want to watch that. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and have yourselves a great time. Enjoy the video, and remember to stay awesome. Hello everyone, ADHD the SideQuestGamer here, and sorry for another Zelda Marathon intermission. Metropolis Zone is still playing through the game. He's almost done if I'm not mistaken, but he's a pretty busy man, so we gotta respect his time in real life, so instead I'll be reviewing the second most voted game on the straw poll I held a while back, and that would be Donkey Kong Land for the Game Boy and Super Game Boy, and I have quite a bit to say about this game.
As do I.
Let us welcome Frank the GaminTank to the SideQuestGamer review show.
Alec is finally collaborating with somebody who isn't Jay of Jay's reviews.
I know, right? This time when Metropolis Zone doesn't like the video, we can't blame me for it.
Get out of my review, Jay. This is GaminTank's time to shine.
Anastasia, sorry, but...
You did not upstage me in the X3 review, okay?
You didn't say it was an X3 review, Alec.
Oh...
Without further ado, let us review Donkey Kong Land, and by us, I mean Frank and I, no one else. Donkey Kong Country, boasting 3D visuals and solid gameplay, came out for the SNES in 1994 and was a massive success. Developed by Rare and published by Nintendo, it pretty much gave Nintendo the edge to win the 4th generation of gaming against the rival Sega Genesis. Of course, we know about the two SNES sequels, with both actually seeing a reasonable amount of success. Not as much success as the first game in terms of sales, but even Donkey Kong Country 3, despite being released in 1996 when the Nintendo 64 was out for a few months, surprisingly sold pretty well.
A few months before the release of Donkey Kong Country 2, Rare released a Game Boy semi-sequel called Donkey Kong Land in this banana yellow cartridge, which Alec doesn't own because he seems to buy his games digitally now.
At least I don't have to fight with the lighting conditions as the 3DS is backlit, unlike the original Game Boy, haha! But anyways, I couldn't get much on the development history of this game in particular, but I can tell you the game's story in accordance with the instructions manual. Basically, the fourth wall breaking Cranky Kong complains to Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong that Donkey Kong Country was only a success for the fancy visuals alone, and claimed they wouldn't enjoy the same success if they were in 8-bit. So Donkey Kong and Diddy were like,
challenge accepted.
And Cranky even got King K. Rool to steal the banana horde again, so the adventure begins on the Game Boy.
Most of Donkey Kong Land's assets are taken directly from Donkey Kong Country, but the game also brings unique enemies and set pieces to make the title stand out. Yes, they are compressed due to the lower resolution of the Game Boy, but still, the game has backgrounds that have anywhere from minimal detail to some of the most detailed backgrounds on the system. I also have to point out that a few levels include parallax scrolling. If you're playing on the Game Boy, you only have access to the monochrome color scheme, as that's all the system could do. Well, it did colors from light green to dark green, but the eShop ports are black and white. However, if you have a Super Game Boy or a Game Boy Color, you have access to more colors, which will make the experience in the game even better. In other words, some of the visuals are too ambitious for the Game Boy.
I do agree that this game is innovative when it comes to graphical and visual effects, but the visuals don't really look that good by today's standards in terms of aesthetics. They put way too much detail into the backgrounds to the point where they just look like the bread that sat in your cupboard for years. Donkey and Diddy Kong sprites, however, look fine as they are, and I have to give Rare a lot of credit for replicating the sprites from the SNES game, as it surprised me the Game Boy was even capable of replicating that graphical style in 8 bits. But again, the backgrounds just don't look that good for some levels, mainly the snow, jungle, and canyon levels. There are many ways to play this game, although I recommend playing it on the Game Boy Color or Super Game Boy for a better experience, as the original Game Boy makes a worse experience than needed, which is a shame since the 3DS eShop only offers the black and white version, and sadly it seems that Rare was too focused on trying to replicate the graphical style of the SNES game, and as a result, having the gameplay suffer to an extent. Don't get me wrong, the gameplay could have been a lot worse, but there is no denying that it also could have been a lot better. The game suffers from three main problems. 1. The controls are really awful. I understand that there are 4 less buttons on the Game Boy, I get that, but how the characters control feels like I'm controlling a wounded acrobat. When you do your normal platforming, you have to be pixel perfect so you don't fall into the abyss below. And because Donkey and Diddy's movement is slippery after a jump, that will happen often.
Alec missed was the atrocious hit detection. There have been times where I should have been hit, and other times where there was enough space to avoid damage.
2. Screen crunch, camera, and visibility. Now, I understand video games on handhelds may have this often, but it depends on how you design your game around this issue that can make or break the game. The camera is focused too close on the character to the point where an enemy would ambush you if you haven't memorized the level design. I've criticized the Game Gear Sonic for this, but that was at least manageable. In this game, it's a common nuisance.
I cannot tell you how many times the detailed backgrounds and sprites took me by surprise. At first it was impressive considering what the games looked like on the Game Boy at the time, but then it wore out as welcome. In fact, it's the limitations of the hardware that repeatedly screwed me over, to the point where some levels slowed down to a crawl to avoid getting hit. The worst one happens when you get hit on a moving platform in the sky levels. After you wait for the other Kong to take an eternity to appear, he falls through! Oh, and big surprise, the game can't scroll vertically fast enough, so it turns the lower part of the screen into a bottomless pit. It sucks.
With these visibility conditions, I can only wish you the best of luck in finding the bonus barrels and Kong letters.
For the Donkey Kong Land sequels, they made the sprites smaller and they lowered the amount of detail in the backgrounds. So there's that.
Oh, I completely agree. I'll have to get to those at some point. And the third and final problem that is prevalent in this game is sporadic difficulty balancing. Now, it is one thing to have the previous issues I stated, but these issues manifest themselves with the sporadic difficulty spikes. The first jungle level was easy, but then when you go to level 2 in that snow level, everything then spikes in difficulty all of a sudden. But then level 3 is pretty easy, but then the galleon level spikes in difficulty again. All because the developers couldn't make up their minds and threw in random levels at random times. The hardest level being 3-5 is a major example of this problem, and some of the difficulty stems from inconsistent level design. Some of the levels are just hard because they can overstay their welcome, like those water levels. It's one thing to have a level to go past 2 checkpoints, but 3? That's just way too long to spend underwater with those carnivorous crustaceans and those annoying as ears. It doesn't help that this game is uncharitable with extra lives and a brutal save system.
While Donkey Kong Country had you play through a few levels then save your game at Candy's save station, Donkey Kong Land allows you to save your game after you get all the Kong letters in a level, or after you beat the world's end boss for the first time.
I find this really annoying because if you die, you would have to start all the way back at the last save point. Sure, you could replay a level where you know where all the Kong letters are, but then you would have to spawn over that level after a game over and spend up to almost a minute crawling around the map screen to get to that level, and that can get pretty tedious depending on which level you attempt to get all the Kong letters on. But as for what this game does right, well, again, I do like the original level themes, like the underwater ruins known as Kremlantis, the canyon, and even the city theme levels, as it really gives this game its own identity. One of my favorite levels in any Donkey Kong game is where you can use the Kong letters you collect as platforms that varies in size depending on how many Kong letters you collect. I wish there were more levels like this, as this was really genius. And it is nice to see 8-bit versions of the level themes I previously enjoyed, like the caves, jungles, and Aztec levels.
While some of the themes are recycled, they're not exactly the same levels, as even the returning level themes have different designs that stand out, like the tornado platform being added to the ruins levels. I do give credit for originality, but that's about it. Just because it's original doesn't mean it could have been better.
I also like the music with some original soundtracks and some well-translated 8-bit remixes of the SNES original. As for original soundtracks, I really enjoyed tracks like the ones that would play in the ice, sky, or city levels. While it's not something I play just to listen to it compared to the soundtracks in the SNES game, I will say the soundtrack does feel more in place with a video game, as it's best enjoyed while playing it. The remixes are well translated, with aquatic ambience and Gangplank Galleon having the best translations in the game, but these remixes are also best enjoyed when playing the game as well, and nothing you would listen to on your MP3 player.
I like the soundtrack for the game. Most songs are faithfully recreated to the 8-bit handheld, and they sound amazing. If I had one thing to say, I think Donkey Kong Land's version of Voices of the Temple is so much better than Donkey Kong Country's version. It's worth giving a listen, since it's the best part of the game.
The music, while I like it, I just say it's just decent. I've heard much better soundtracks in the other Game Boy games, and I did hear Graham Norgate and David Wise were in charge of the soundtrack departments. Although you can probably tell which composer composed which track when you play the game, and I won't say one is better than the other, as that's like comparing apples to oranges. But overall, Donkey Kong Land, I don't exactly hate it, nor think it's a bad game.
What?
Look, I'm not saying it's great, but it's not bad. Let me explain. Yes, the controls, progression, and really the overall experience has some flaws that can be unforgivingly treacherous, but I never really was so frustrated I wanted to rage quit the game, and I've only played this game once before. Now believe me, I cannot recommend this game to a lot of people. In fact, I would say skip it even if you are a die-hard Donkey Kong Country fan. You wouldn't lose much sleep over it, but I only found half the game poorly designed, but the other half was just flawed but playable. This game is at the very least playable. On a scale of the atrocious Sonic 2 Game Gear to the decent Sonic 1 Game Gear, this game is right in the middle. I give my rating of a 53 out of 100. It's not bad, but it's not great either. It's just a very mediocre game to me personally, and while I do have no desire to replay this game anytime soon, in fact, after the inevitable Let's Play of it, I will likely never pick this game up again. But when I do, I'll just be in for a mediocre platformer, and not a bad, broken platformer.
There's no denying that I do not find this game worth playing. If a game's control and graphics are the reason it's less enjoyable, then there's something wrong. Donkey Kong Land is not a good game. The screen crunch makes it really tough to want to go through the levels at your own pace. I was stuck playing at the game's pace, and constantly paranoid that something was going to get me by surprise. On top of that, the horrible hit detection and the random times input is not recognized, and you have something that should not have been made. At the very least, something that could have used more testing before its release. These problems unfortunately hold this game back from being almost, if not as good as the SNES counterpart. I wanted to like this game. In fact, I wanted to love this game, but I just can't because of these major problems. I think Cranky Kong was right about them not enjoying the same success on an 8-bit game, but the SNES game, however, is still great, and again, I cannot stress enough that the two Game Boy sequels are much better than this first entry.
And now it's time to do the collaborators agreement, and audience, go check out Frank's channel. He has his own solo review of Donkey Kong Land as well, but he also has a killer podcast and occasionally Let's Plays fan games like Mushroom Kingdom Invaders and whatnot. Do check out GaminTank's channel, it's pretty good. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us, Frank. It was great to have you here.
No problem, Alec. I'm happy to be here. It was fun. But I have a question for you.
Sure, ask anything.
You didn't collaborate with me despite ExoParadigmGamer because when he did his review, I was originally supposed to be brought on, but because I was unavailable at the time, you are taking this opportunity to one-up him because he wouldn't let you on the Unversecast, right?
What? No. Whatever gave you that idea?
the man himself, and your public video where you tried to expose him.
Why, hello there, Alec Alger, the side quest gamer.
Why doesn't my editor's audience track cheer for me when I'm on screen?
Because everyone loves Exo.
Silence you.
Anyways, Alec, I saw your little video exposing me, and just wanted to let you know that your maniacal plan of spiting me by collaborating with Frank on a Donkey Kong Land review has failed. Jay told me everything. You thought you could cash in on the GaminTank name to boost viewership, and spite me in one fell swoop. Well, the joke's on you, Alec, because Frank was aware of this the whole time. Before I take my leave, I have but one last thing to say to you, rude sir. You will never be on the Unversed cast.
Alec.
As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, don't ever trust anyone with your evil schemes. It'll just bite you in the butt someday.